And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska aviation weather outlook on this Saturday, July 5th, 2025. I'm going to start out something a little different here on this aviation segment. Those of you who are veteran sky watchers and pilots that get up super early in the morning in the summertime may be familiar with noctilucent clouds. These are becoming a more common summer occurrence because of the increase in rocket exhaust in the upper atmosphere. These are the Earth's highest clouds at 50 miles above the surface in the mesosphere, near the edge of space. So we have, up at that level, there are trace amounts of water ice, and that little bit of water ice can condense out onto either particles left by meteors entering the atmosphere or by rocket exhaust. And rocket exhaust, as of this time, is producing most of these condensation nuclei. So this is 2:45 this morning. Stepped outside and took a look and said, yep, they're out there, and they've been sighted across Europe and Canada here over the past several days. Here are the lower tropospheric higher clouds, and this illustrates that better. These clouds way up here are near 50 miles above the surface. These are, maybe at about 30,000 feet. So again, quite a height level difference. And right now, the sun, at least in the Anchorage area at that time at night, never gets much below 6-7 degrees below the horizon. As we get a little further along in July, mid to late July, early August, we'll have a little longer nighttime with the sun angle getting down there below in the range of 6 and 16 degrees below the horizon. So that'll even further illuminate an event like this if it should happen again, which I would expect that'll be the case. So keep your eyes peeled. Otherwise, flight conditions. We have an area of low pressure that's coming out of the lower Bering, crossing the Alaska Peninsula, forcing this front up into the western Gulf that'll have areas of rain and rain showers, breezier conditions coming in to Kennedy Entrance, Kamishak Bay, Katmai region. These winds, especially as you get upwards a bit tonight, could be 30 knots. They will be coming down during the day on Sunday. Otherwise, VFR conditions are expected across the mainland, central, northern interior. Very warm temperatures. Hottest days are going to be this past Friday and Saturday today. We'll start to see things, the big upper high here begin to break down with a cold front approaching from the north and northwest. So we get into Sunday afternoon, there could be some isolated to scattered thunderstorms across areas in the interior from along the Brooks Range down through the middle upper Yukon Valley, 40-mile gold country, even here up toward the west arm of the Alaska Range. And then MVFR conditions are expected across the Gulf Coast into the Panhandle, and as that front moves north and eastward, it's going to push more rain and lower cloud cover in along areas of the Gulf, including the Panhandle here Sunday afternoon and into the day Monday. So on Monday, notice IFR conditions develop along the Chukchi Beaufort Sea coastline in response to that cold front. Winds are going to go northerly there, so that's going to bring down some much colder air after temperatures in the 70s and even some 80-degree readings, North Slope, Brooks Range. We find IFR conditions Monday morning along the intercoastal mountains there of the Panhandle up against British Columbia, the north up there around Haines, Skagway, Chilkoot, and White, and inside there of Yakutat Bay on over toward parts of the southeast interior. Fair amount of IFR conditions expected out toward the lower Bering and western Aleutians. And then Monday afternoon, there could be some scattered thunderstorms develop across the interior between the Brooks and Alaska Range, especially up along the middle upper Yukon and lower middle Tanana valleys. But there is going to begin to be an intrusion of colder air coming in from the north as a result of that strong cold front. And we still may find some IFR conditions along the intercoastal mountains there with British Columbia and the Panhandle. And then out over the lower southeast and southern portion of the Bering Sea in through the central to western Aleutians. So past conditions on Sunday, we are looking at Anatuvik Pass VFR, but there could be an isolated to scattered thunderstorm develop within vicinity of the pass Sunday afternoon and evening. Same thing, Adigan Pass VFR, but a vicinity shower thunderstorm certainly possible. Lake Clark and Merrill, generally MVFR expected. That front is going to be pushing up from the south and west, spreading in some showers course, as the day goes on. Could be a thunderstorm develop on the other side of the west entrance there, especially west of Merrill Pass. Same thing, Rainy Pass becoming MVFR there expected Sunday, with perhaps an isolated storm out toward the west entrance. And then Windy Pass, MVFR conditions early, becoming VFR. Isabel Pass should generally be VFR, but to the west of the pass, MVFR conditions expected, especially up and along the mountains. And as you fly north of the north entrance, you may encounter an isolated to scattered thunderstorm develop there as we go through Sunday afternoon and evening. Same thing, Metasta Pass. As you fly northward, north of the north entrance toward the upper Tanana Valley, there could be an isolated shower storm. And generally VFR conditions expected Sunday. Tanita Pass, MVFR becoming VFR, with MVFR conditions kind of holding over the mountains just south of the pass. And then for Portage Pass, look for generally MVFR conditions expected there on Sunday. Same thing, Chilkoot and White up there in the northern panhandle, MVFR conditions expected Sunday. So looking at the freezing level, first at the surface, it's riding right along the Beaufort Sea coast. This will advance southward early in the week with that cold front. Meanwhile, we have this low pressure here that's transferring energy up into the Gulf. This is going to force a front up into the panhandle along the northeastern Gulf Coast with more rain, some lower ceilings here as we get into especially latter half of Sunday and on Monday. And again, more low pressure kind of lagging back here out toward the Bering. But the freezing levels aloft are highest still 12,000 feet early Sunday morning along the eastern half of the Beaufort Sea coast, including places like Dead Horse, Kaktovik. The central northern interior, generally freezing levels aloft above 10,000 feet with this pool of a little cooler air aloft associated with low pressure crossing the Alaska Peninsula and trailing back toward the western Bering. So with that system in the front, there is going to be breezier conditions, especially tonight in here through Shelikof Strait, Kamishak Bay, entrance to Cook Inlet, Katmai region. Thicker clouds producing some of the rain above 10,000 feet along the Gulf Coast, above 12,000 feet as you get inland in areas of south central back to the southwest interior. But the bulk of any rain is going to be coming up through this area of the Gulf, along the Gulf Coast. And here we have the circulation clearly indicated 30,000 feet jet stream level. Here's the low circulation. There is a jet core, 115 knots, that circulation south of the low center. We bring it down to 9,000 feet, 700 millibars. Here's the low circulation. Ahead of it, more southeast quadrant, pushing up just off of Haida Gwaii and the southern part of the panhandle. We find winds of 35 to as high as 45 to locally 50 knots aloft from the southwest, especially as you get out into the North Pacific. And then finally at 3,000 feet, winds are not all that noticeable. I would say, though, coming up here along areas of the Gulf Coast, and less so the winds will be coming down. The strongest winds through this region will be this Saturday night. But there's still a pocket of winds, 35, 40 knots southwest of Haida Gwaii. And then as we look out over here, coming down through the Bering Strait along the west side of the state, between the lower Yukon coast, Nome, and St. Lawrence Island, north-northeast winds to 35 knots. And so the greatest threat of turbulence, at least during the day on Sunday, will be along this frontal boundary. Could be some moderate turbulence from outside of Yakutat Bay, Cape Suckling, Hinchinburg entrance to Kennedy entrance, Katmai region, on over, especially through Shelikof Strait. There may be some moderate turbulence Sunday, surface to 4,000 feet, and then another pocket way out toward the central Aleutians, surface to 3,000 feet, generally west of Adak.